All right, folks, we begin a new letter, the fifth letter. This begins with a quote from Tanakh, from the book of Shmuel, that says, V'yas David Shem, and David made a name. So the simple meaning of this verse, as Rashi explains in the text, is that King David made a good name for the Jewish people because he buried the dead of the enemies of Israel. Nice thing. Simple meaning. The Zohar, the Holy Zohar, gives a mystical meaning. It says that King David executed justice and tzedakah, charity, with all of the people. And as it continues, and so Zohar says that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the author of the Zohar, of course, said, "He who makes the holy name every day," he said this as he wept, that person who gives charity unto those that are in need. So the Alter Rebbe is going to explain to us the following questions that need to be understood in this statement from the Zohar. First of all, what does it mean to make God's name? How do you make his name? God's name is his name. Make it. Even when you think about it, even our names, once it's given to you, no one's making your name. The word in Hebrew is v'ya'as, and he made. David made the name of God. That's what the Zohar is explaining. So we need to understand that. How do you make God's name? God's name is independent of us. And secondly, if you're making it, then why is it tzedakah, charity, specifically that is making the name of God? We need to understand that. So we're going to come back to this later. And what we're going to deal with today and further classes is what our sages say, that the sages in the Talmud, the divine name is composed of the letter Yud and a Hey, and God creates the worlds with Yud and a Hey, as the verse says. The Yud G-d with Yud and a Hey of God's name. Hashem Tzurei Lamim, Hashem is the rock, the support, the strength of the world. And our sages then take from this verse that the spiritual worlds, specifically Gan Eden, Garden of Eden, the higher one and the lower, there's two levels, one in the world of Bria, one in the world of Yitzira. The letter Yud creates that world. And this world that we all know and love, hopefully, is created with the letter Hey. Of course, we need to understand that. What does that mean exactly? Well, today we're going to get the understanding of the spiritual worlds, followed in forthcoming classes. We'll have this world. We'll get a beginning, a running start of that today, but let us get into the spiritual worlds. What happens in spiritual worlds? What happens to our soul when it leaves this world? So, as we know, it goes through a process, of course, of cleansing, but once it's cleansed, it goes into Gan Eden. What is happening in Gan Eden? What is happening in the Garden of Eden to our soul? It is experiencing a delight, a splendor of the Shekhinah, of the divine presence of God that radiates. That pleasure is in the apprehension of the divine. That there's some degree of apprehension of that light and vitality that's diffused and revealed to our souls. Of what? Of the Ein Sof, of the limitlessness of God. Every soul according to its capability. That capability, by the way, is based on what we learned here. The more we learn over here, the more that learning that we've gained here, we will experience it there. That light that will be diffused to us, that light is the light of divine wisdom, of Chokhmah, that will be diffused into the palace of Bina, of understanding. So again, what we have learned here, we're learning it on one dimension. What we will then, our soul, have pleasure will be in the apprehension of it in that lofty divine level of the Yud of Chokhmah, which is the primordial intelligence that is beyond intelligence, that will shine in Bina, that will shine in Bina to give us a ray of diffused light from Chokhmah that we will will be delighted by it, tantalized by it. In other words, we'll apprehend that there is something beyond even what we apprehend, the Yud of Chokhmah. Being that, if you recall, the letter Yud representing Chokhmah is the seminal point. It is the source of intelligence, but itself is beyond intelligence. So it is the source of giving comprehension in Bina, but it's beyond it because it is the vehicle of the Ein Sof, of the limitlessness of God. It is nullified to and reveals hence the limitlessness of God through Chokhmah, being that seminal point, having that self-abnegation to that which is greater than itself. So then it now diffuses a ray of light of that into comprehension. And the souls will have pleasure from that in Gan Eden. So what is giving the vitality is the Yud. The Yud of Chokhmah. That's what's flowing. And this is therefore what the Zohar says, that Chokhmah is referred to as the dot, as the letter Yud can be represented by a dot. Sometimes people actually, when in writing, this is the print, this is the, how do you call that? I can't think of the English word. Well, it's like the written word as opposed to the block letters. So in the written form, many people write a Yud just with a dot. So it is the dot in the palace. A palace is a building. That is Bina. Bina is binyan, to build. It's taking, of course, from the seminal point of an idea, elaborating, expanding upon it, creating a palace. And this is what the souls will be housed in the world of Bina, and they will be comprehending from Chokhmah in the house, in the palace of Bina, a divine light of God that is essentially transcendent. And Chokhmah also referred to as Eden, like in Gan Eden, but Eden, to which is said, no eye has beheld it. Why no eye has beheld it? Because it transcends and defies comprehension, ultimately, right? But the souls will get a little tantalizing of that light that will be in the palace, and that's what we will have in Gan Eden. All right, that's basic idea of Gan Eden. Now the Alter Rebbe takes further this idea of the Yud of Chokhmah, and it says, moreover, that it's referred to as the father. Well, just like the father is the seminal seed, right? The mother is the hay, the expansion, right? The father gives the seed, and the mother has the 9 months of gestation, of developing it, building it, right? The fetus. So further, the idea of Chochmah. Chochmah is the father that founds the daughter. Also Hey, which refers to Malchus. With Malchus is the letters. So what it's saying is that Yud of Chochmah, the father, is the source of Malchus, which is speech. The letters of speech. That's the level of Malchus. Now, by the way, you might think that this is probably not the way you thought about it, unless you know something about linguistics. But and this, what's interesting here, that this is written 200 years ago, and it's based on teachings of Zohar, which is 1500 years ago, even more actually. 1800 years ago. And what is that? That the letters of speech, one would think, is something of intelligence, and therefore wouldn't come from Chochmah, it should come from Bina, right? Or maybe speech is coming from our emotions, because, what do you speak about? That which you have a feeling towards. But no, we see very clearly over here, the Alter Rebbe is saying that it's coming from a transcendent place of comprehension. And indeed, we know that today, that speech is developmental. What does it mean it's developmental? It means it's not intelligence. It's not based on intelligence. Hence, someone, a child who started speaking at 12 months, starting saying words, and or at a year and a half already is saying sentences, and I think very intelligent. No, it just means they developed more quickly, because it's not coming from Bina, which is intelligence, speech. It's coming from primordial intelligence, which is Chochmah, beyond intelligence, as we explained. It's the point, right? It's the source of intelligence, but it itself is beyond intelligence. And that's where it comes, and that's the idea over here that it says father who founded the daughter. And the Alter Rebbe proves this very simply. When you want to speak, so for example, if you want to pronounce the letter base, so I don't think I don't use my intelligence to say, oh, well, base, so I've got to use my lips, base, and if it's vav, I've got to use my lips differently. So I'm using my intelligence to think about how to use my lips in pronouncing a particular letter, or any other. I need to pronounce a little, ches. Oh, that's more guttural. So I'm thinking about how to use my larynx, the gut, in order to pronounce the ch sound. You're not using your intelligence to do that, right? Even when it comes to the vowels, which actually is even more clearly, interesting, the word patach aleph or kametz aleph oh, right? So patach means to open. So the patach means when you're saying the letter aleph is because you're opening up your mouth, and then when you want to say a kametz, for those who are familiar with those, I'm sorry, I don't have it over here to show you, but a patach is just a line, a vowel underneath the letter that's a cross, and a patach, a kametz rather, is a line with a little, it's like a small little T, or very wide across, and small, going down vertical is very short. And that kametz, actually the word kametz means to squeeze. So you squeeze your mouth and say kametz aleph oh, right? So my intelligence, I'm not using my intelligence to think that how I should pronounce that vowel. So what am I doing? Indeed, if it's not coming from intelligence, well, it's coming from my desire, my soul, to say the particular letter. It's not I'm not engaging my intelligence in order to be able to say the particular letters, to say particular words. It is a desire of my soul, right, that I have, that and that desire of the soul is the will that I desire this particular word or letter to say, and I say it. Well, that's a developmental thing, and because that comes from primordial hidden intellect of Chachma. Right? So when I want to say a letter, a word, just with letters we'll start, because we're speaking about letters, right? The letter Yud creating the world to come, Gan Eden. So when I want to say a particular letter, it's the will of my soul that I want to do this, that is then through the means of primordial intelligence, meaning beyond intelligence, right? Because I'm not using my intelligence to be able to say a particular letter. It's beyond that, is the source of that expression of the particular letter. So right now I want to say Kametz Aleph, O, Patach Aleph, A. It's the desire of the soul. Now, you might think, well, isn't that kind of obvious? Well, I think most people, until I don't know when it was that in our modern world, that speech and the capability of speaking was understood to be something developmental that's beyond intelligence. Again, primordial Chachma, as we're explaining over here. But this is written 200 years ago, and it's sourced in the Zohar from 1800 years ago, this concept. So today's class, the Alter Rebbe concludes in saying this is why an infant cannot speak even though they understand everything. So they have the intelligence, but they can't speak. And you see sometimes the child is frustrated. You know, Kenai Nahara mentioned I've had many kids. Kenai Nahara, we have 10 children. And we had a couple of kids, one child I can think of in particular, that only started speaking when they were 3, and we thought, oh, maybe there was something wrong with them. Nothing wrong. As a matter of fact, that child is extremely intelligent. But it was delayed developmentally, if that's the term you want to use, and only started saying, words, single words, at the age of 3. But it has nothing to do with intelligence, because that child understood, and actually because the child understood and is 3 years old, there was a lot of frustration that created because the child couldn't express itself, themselves, right? Because speech is not a result of revealed or apprehended intellect, but it is from the hidden intellect, Chachma, right? Which has not yet been developed, and therefore the child can't speak. But what we see from this is that the letters of speech, that they derive from Chachma. That's the important point over here. Father, the Yud of God's name, Chachma, is the father, the source of speech, which is the Hey of Malchus, the daughter. Which we're going to get more into that. Just that is a background to lead us the next few days into a we've got rest of the week at least. Ooh. Yeah, the whole week to deal with this, a fascinating, important idea. In order to understand, ultimately, how do we make God's name means we play a role in the divine order of things. Right now, though, all we understand is that in the spiritual realm, there's a comprehension of that which is beyond comprehension. There's a glimmer of apprehending that there's something beyond that gives real delight and pleasure to the soul. Real delight and pleasure to the soul. Maybe we're getting a little taste of that now. The truth is, Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, is not up there. It's right here, but on a different dimension. A different dimension. So holy people are capable of being attuned to that dimension. Like the story of Jacob coming into getting the blessings from his father, Isaac, Yitzchak. And it says that he came in with this smell and the taste of Gan Eden, of Garden of Eden. He came in with that. And what do you mean he came in? Isn't that something in the future that our soul goes to? It's true, it's in the future and time where our soul goes to, but the dimension of that reality is not like we think is up there, just like God's not up there, right? God's here and transcendent of being here at the same time. So likewise, the dimension of Gan Eden is a dimension that is here. Holy people are attuned to that. And therefore they can give us teachings that are going on there. They can give us things that are happening there. I don't know. But the holy people do know. All right, folks. Sharing is caring. It's time to share. It's time to share the Alter Rebbe's teachings. It's a new letter, a new beginning. Every letter is, unique in itself. And here we give an opportunity of everybody understanding the creative process, understanding our capability, and ultimately we're going to learn how we make God's name. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from my home in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. I just realized. Okay, I'm just looking to see if there's any questions. I'm sorry. No, I don't see. And for those I didn't get a chance to acknowledge, thank you for joining. Have a wonderful day. Good Tavach, Shavua Tov, good week.